So what I want to talk to you about is an initiative we have going on within the school with the faculty and staff that we're all pretty excited about and we're very engaged in. It's a multi-year effort that we are doing, and it came about as the convergence of really two things in the school, or in the world, really. The first is that, at Sandy Spring, we, I suppose in this Quaker spirit of continuing revelation, we are constantly seeking to improve the learning experience of our students in our program. That's the heart of what we're trying to do, is constantly examine and make sure that experience is as strong as it can be for our students within the context of our mission and our philosophy of education and our values. We have a professional development committee at the school that helps guide that work, or aspects of that work. And one of the things that professional development committee has really been focusing on for a few years is the quality of teaching at Sandy Spring Friends School, in the classroom, but not just in the classroom, also on the fields, also a part of our experiential learning programs and so forth, but especially in the classroom as that sort of core experience of school experience. So in the first few years of that committee's work, we were really focusing on sort of the structure of professional development at the school, and how do we optimize professional development experiences for our faculty and make those stronger and more effective. And some very specific things have come out of that. But more recently, we have been focusing more on the content of that professional development, looking at pedagogy. How do we teach? What is good teaching at Sandy Spring Friends School? What is good teaching generally, and what can we learn about good teaching, and bring that into Sandy Spring Friends School, and again, make our student experience as strong as possible. So that's sort of one thread. The other thread is that just in our world, the advances in neuroscience have just been incredible. Julie, yep. So neuroscience, I'm sure you cannot get through any newspaper or periodical or a NPR news show or something without hearing something these days about advances in neuroscience, about how the brain works, how we learn, and so forth. Well, I can't think of anything that would be more important to the work of a school than learning what's going on in neuroscience and how that might inform our practice as teachers. It'd be a little bit like a surgeon not being interested in the latest medical, approaches to medicine or pharmacological improvements, whatever it might be. We expect our doctors to be continually up to date with what the latest information is, and similarly with teachers, we need to be up to date with the latest information that's coming out of science in our field as well. So we have this brain, this learning organ that we have, and how can we optimize? How can we take best advantage of the way that brain works in the learning process as we teach our students? So, the umbrella term for taking the neuroscience and bringing it into the context of a school is mind-brain education, which is abbreviated MBE. So one of the things you'll hear in conversations around campus is we'll talk about MBE. Well, what are you doing in your classroom that's related to MBE, or what MBE thing are you trying? It's referring to this mind-brain education piece, bringing neuroscience into the classroom. So it turns out we are blessed in the Washington, D.C. area to have a national resource for mind-brain education in independent schools. That resource is called the Center for Transformative Teaching and Learning, the CTTL, and it's funded originally by an E.E. Ford Foundation grant, but now it's really a self-sustaining nonprofit organization, and it happens to be housed at St. Andrew's Episcopal School just down the road from us. So to have that resource so close to us, that national resource so close to us, provides us a wonderful opportunity as a school to really focus on this. And it turns out that one of the really good books in this area, which is a book called NeuroTeach, was written by Glenn Whitman, who's the director of the CTTL, and another fellow, Ian Kelleher, who also works at the CTTL. So, and I'll talk more about this book in a minute. So what are we doing? What's come out of this? So the Professional Development Committee that I described, we, along with our learning specialists, reached out to Glenn Whitman and the Center for Transformative Teaching and Learning, and we engaged them in a conversation about how they could collaborate with us as we were looking at pedagogy in our classrooms and trying to bring MBE into our teaching. So he met with the committee, and then he met with our faculty back at the end of last school year, back at the June end of the year faculty meetings. Glenn came in, met with our faculty, and started to set the stage for this work that we're doing with them. We're going to be working with the CTTL this year and next year, so it's a multi-year effort, at least in a formal sense, and certainly we'll be following up after that. This is a long-term project and effort of ours in the school. The next thing we did is NeuroTeach was the summer reading this summer for all employees of the school, really, not just our classroom teachers, but administrators, our student support staff, and our operations staff as well. At Sandy Spring Friends School, we believe that we're really all teachers here, all of the adults in the community are teachers of our students in one form or another. And so by having all of our staff read this, it helps get us onto sort of a common page in terms of language to talk about the learning process and so forth. So it may seem like a member of our wonderful maintenance crew or a bus driver or someone who's working in fundraising or something might not necessarily have that much interest in this, but in fact our belief is we really wanted people to have a foundation in neuroscience, in education, in order to be a part of this community. So that was our summer reading. Glenn came back and worked with us again in August to map out our work for this year, and then he met with us again in October with the whole faculty. And then each of these sessions where he's kind of pushed us in our thinking, not only in our understanding, but also how we're going to apply this in our classrooms. We've had homework in between to do. Just as an example, during the second semester here, all of our teachers are engaged in peer observations where they're being asked to go into classrooms or have a colleague come into their classroom as a non-evaluative, this is not a supervisory thing, this is a professional development experience, to get feedback on applying the techniques that we've been learning from mind-brain education, or to be able to provide some suggestions about how these things might be brought into a classroom and so forth in a peer-to-peer sort of way. Glenn will be meeting with us again on February 19th on our Professional Development Day, which parents, if you got that email from me about the snow day counts, and I said in there, we're really reluctant to let go of our February 19th Professional Development Day. That's why, because that day is part of this extended effort to focus on mind-brain education in our classrooms. We're going to continue this collaboration into the 2019-2020 school year. So we are really looking at long-term change and growth through this effort. So a few notes about MBE, just so you get a sense of what we're looking at, just some examples how this translates into the classroom and other learning environments at the school, including the dorm, athletic fields, or the basketball court. I had a history teacher in high school, Coach Bremagen. He was the football coach, and in small Ohio town, football's a pretty important thing. But he was a history teacher, a very engaging history teacher, and he used to tell us, the brain is a muscle, and it has to be exercised. It sounded a little corny then, and may sound a little corny now, but it actually turns out to have a lot of truth in that statement that one of the things we're learning through neuroscience is that the brain has to be challenged. In order to develop those new neural pathways, which are really the physiological manifestation of learning, that we're actually making new connections in the brain, electrical, neurological, neural connections. In order for that to happen, you have to stress the brain, in a sense, in the same way that if you want to improve the strength of a muscle, you have to stress the muscle, and then the muscle adapts. The brain is much the same way, analogous to a muscle that you have to stress the brain, and then the brain develops new resources in order to adapt to that stress and to meet that new challenge. So, so that's one of the things we're learning about. Julie, if you can go to the next slide, thank you. One of the things we're learning about is the nature of stress in learning. It turns out if you have a very simple task, then generally speaking, the more stress, the better. If you want to teach someone to hit a button as quickly as possible, then the more stress you apply to that task, the more quickly and the better someone learns that simple task. Think of it like electroshock. If you want to teach someone to push a button quickly, subject them to electroshock, they'll learn pretty quick. But not that I'm recommending. But when it comes to complex tasks, which are most of what we're doing in school, it turns out that there's a different pattern to stress. There's sort of an optimal zone of stress. As you see there at the peak of the curve, there's an optimal arousal. Arousal is another word for stress in this case, stimulus, you could say. You know, if there's low stimulus or low stress or low arousal, well, then it's boring. Okay, it's not of interest. But as the stimulus or stress rises, there's greater interest and greater performance. But then at a certain point it drops off again. If the stress gets too high, beyond the optimal amount, then motivation and learning drop off again. So the trick is, how do we optimize that level of challenge or stress, or there's a lot of words we could use here. How do we optimize that so that there's enough stimulation to be interesting and be engaging, but not so much that it starts to raise anxiety, and anxiety tends to suppress performance. And of course the trick in a classroom is, that's a different place for every kid in the classroom, right? So, so that's the challenge of a teacher, but just being aware of this sort of stress curve is an important part of trying to optimize the experience. It's one of the reasons why timed tests have limited long-term educational value. They may have some short-term value, and they may have administrative or bureaucratic value, but as a learning experience, standardized tests and timed tests that are sort of high-stress, high-stakes testing have really questionable educational value. So one of the other things we're learning about is memory. Memory is essential to the learning process. You have to know some things to do some things. So one of the things we're learning about is how to optimize memory. How do you, if there are certain things that students need to be able to recall, what's the optimal way to teach that? And it turns out there's something called the forgetting curve. Okay, if you learn something, you've got high recall, and then over time your recall drops off. And then if you're reminded or you practice something again, it jumps up again, generally higher than the first time, and then there's a drop off again, and then when you reinforce again, it jumps up again. And so timing that reinforcement and recognizing that you need to come back periodically with key information to reinforce that factual memory information, or that skill that has to be remembered, that's essential to the process. And as teachers learn more about that, they can really optimize that as they build that into their lesson design. One of the other things we're learning about is formative assessments as opposed to summative assessments. Summative assessments are basically, the end of the chapter test. Show me that you learned this, and whatever you show me on that paper, you're going to get a grade for it. The grade goes in the grade book, and it labels you for life. Okay, that's a summative assessment where at the end, show me what you've learned and what that you're going to be evaluated based on that. Formative assessment is testing along the way that's low stakes, that simply provides data to the teacher and to the student about, have I learned this? It's a check-in, okay? Formative assessments, it turns out that one of the things, not surprising if you just think for 10 seconds about it, effective formative assessment is a key part of effective teaching for teachers to be able to get feedback. Did my kids learn what I thought I taught them? And for the student to see, do I really know this the way I'm expected to know it, or the way I thought I knew it? So those little formative assessments that might not even be graded, they're just check-ins to provide feedback, are an essential part of effective teaching. So one of the things we're learning about is how to do a formative assessment well. And we're learning about, again, this is in the news, but how essential adequate sleep is to the learning process. Parents, you're part of this picture too in terms of making sure our students get enough sleep, which plays into our discussions about homework, how much homework is appropriate, what kind of homework is worth the time that students are taking in the evening. That's an active topic of discussion. And then another example would be the role of technology. Where does it help? Where does it hurt? Where is technology an aid to learning? Where is technology maybe not, the computer technology maybe not the best approach? For example, there's some new studies that are coming out that are talking about note-taking. And there's a growing body of knowledge that seems to show that taking notes on a computer is, by and large, not as effective as handwriting notes in terms of later recall. But there's something about the handwriting process that just aids retention and comprehension better than typing on a keyboard. Now again, these are broad stroke generalizations. That doesn't mean that's necessarily the best strategy for every student, but in general, these are the things that we are looking at as educators to help inform and improve our teaching. So, Julie, if you could go to the next slide. It turns out that being an effective teacher is a very complicated process. We've always known that, but we're taking fresh looks at that. I hope you can read this well enough. The top circle there says knowledge of pedagogy, so teaching methodology. The bottom one says knowledge of the context of the class in the school. Context. The left one says knowledge of subject matter, and the right one says knowledge of the students. Okay? So to have effective teaching, a teacher needs awareness and skill in all of those areas to bring those things together to make the classroom the most effective it can be. And so one of the things we're doing is we're really seeing ourselves, teachers, that we're becoming researchers. Not only researchers in terms of the research out there, but researchers in terms of trying and experimenting within our own classrooms to try to optimize and improve our learning and again, ultimately the learning experience for our students. So, Julie, if you go to the last slide there. Again, this is another way of talking about kind of the complexity of effective teaching. So here's our Venn diagram. The yellow is the student, orange is the teacher, and the blue at the bottom is the content. And where each of those interact, I would say at Sandy Spring, we've always been incredibly strong at the top about the interaction between the student and the teacher, the relationship that exists there between the two. Our teachers are wonderful experts in their field, so the expertise in content, I feel really good about that. Relevant, making the material relevant to students, that's an important part of MBE is understanding that attaching new knowledge to existing knowledge or making it relevant to the student is essential to the learning process. And those are all the things that go into making that classroom experience effective. And that's where we're focusing our energies as a faculty is becoming facile at that. So I've talked probably more than long enough. But just to give you a sense, that's the work that's going on within the faculty. If your parents or board members or whoever, I encourage you to ask faculty about this. I think you'll find a lot of enthusiasm from our teachers for the work that's going on right now. So with that, I'm going to invite Kip up to talk about the work of the board.
I have to say, David's done a marvelous job as interim head of school, while our good friend Tom is on a well-deserved leave of absence, albeit short. But we haven't lost a step, so it's working out really, really well. Thank you very much, David. So, good evening, and thank you for coming. On behalf of our very dedicated Board of Trustees, most of whom are here tonight, we're pleased to have the opportunity to get to know our community better, to provide some information to you this evening from our perspective on the school, and most importantly, to respond to your questions about this school year's initiatives and to get your ideas that will help us develop and execute on policies that will make a great school even greater. With us tonight, as the majority of our current board, we want to know your concerns and what you think the school can do better than it does now. We would also invite you to consider joining the Board of Trustees, and I'll try not to make this sound like a sales pitch, but think about it. In a few minutes, before we ask our board committee co-clerks to present some information to you about our current initiatives and projects and areas of study, I wanted to give you my view of the school over time, tell you a little bit about the board and our use of Quaker process and policy development, and some challenges that I believe that we face over the longer term. I'm a graduate of the Sandy Spring class of 1971. Our two children are alumni of the school, as is our son-in-law. My granddaughter will be enrolling soon in the PK3 program, if I have anything at all to say about this. Sandy Spring is a community that always welcomes its alumni back throughout their lives, and it's been a source of comfort for us when we need it. It's always there for alumni. I've regularly described Sandy Spring as the most important institutional experience of my life. I was taught to think and write creatively here, and it provided a wonderful foundation for my success in college and law school and throughout my career. I'm completely satisfied then and now with the product that Sandy Spring offers. There are always things that we can do better, and we want to know from you what those are, but overall we think a Sandy Spring education is top-notch. But we, and I mean the collective we, face some challenges. Some of the issues that our board is currently grappling with are, and this is just a few, the need to increase and preserve a high level of diversity among the student body. We want to ensure that financial aid is available at a level that makes the experience at Sandy Spring available to everyone, regardless of socioeconomic circumstances. We want to make the school sustainable in the years to come, notwithstanding perhaps an insufficient focus in years past on philanthropy and the endowment. We want to improve and update the facilities on our beautiful campus, and we have a few initiatives along that line. We need to expand the meeting house. We need to do some renovations of some of the older buildings, and our big project, the new upper school, you're going to hear a lot about here in a few minutes. We also need to balance the value of the historic openness of the campus, something that a lot of Sandy Spring alumni value very highly, with the absolute obligation to ensure complete safety and security of the students. So where that balance is a constant source of discussion through the administration and on the board. The board doesn't make small plans, we make big plans. And we're executing on them this school year, and we want to tell you about them tonight. Our board consists of between 20 and 30 trustees and is typically around 23. It's a fairly large board. 8 trustees are appointed by the Sandy Spring monthly meeting and 4 by the Baltimore yearly meeting. The rest are appointed by the board, and at all times a majority of the board members must be Quakers. Trustees appointed by the school are nominated by the Committee on Trustees, which is the closest thing we have essentially to an executive committee. Board members serve terms of 3 years, and there's a 2-term limit. Most trustees serve 2 terms, which helps with continuity, and frankly, there's a bit of a learning curve. As officers, we have a clerk, an assistant clerk, a recording clerk, and a treasurer. Our assistant clerk is Hamid Farouki. Daryl Britt is our recording clerk, and Catherine Barry is our beloved treasurer. At board meetings, which we have once a month, we have in attendance most of the time representatives of the Parents Association, a Torch representative, who this year, by the way, is Begay Prom, a most impressive young lady, and a faculty representative, who this year is Eduardo Polon. We conduct our board meetings with reference to Quaker business practice, and we work together very well. While different perspectives emerge, at the end of the evening, to use a very moldering sports metaphor, we come together as a team and we get the job done. A lot of our work is done in committees. Tonight you're going to hear briefly from the Diversity Community and Spiritual Life Committee. These are standing committees of the board. Diversity, Community, and Spiritual Life is clearly the most popular of all of our board committees. Our Finance Committee, the Buildings and Grounds Committee, the Advancement Committee, and the Committee on Trustees. We have some of our most knowledgeable staff members here as well, so that when you ask a question, you're going to get a complete answer. The DCSL committee assesses the school's spiritual and community well-being and the continued relationship with a monthly meeting and the Baltimore yearly meeting. I'll leave the rest of the description of DCSL to the co-clerks. The co-clerks this year are Tanya Lakey from the Sandy Spring class of 1974 and Gregory Arms. The Finance Committee's goal is to provide financial oversight for the school. They develop the budget and they do what all finance committees do with a great deal of professionalism. Catherine Barry, our treasurer, and Cynthia Raposo are the co-clerks. The Buildings and Grounds Committee describes its function as working jointly with the head of school to develop buildings and grounds related policy for review and approval by the board. Its co-clerks are Tony Evans and Ken Pollock. The Advancement Committee's goal is to promote a culture of philanthropy and engagement within the school community. The co-clerks are Tom Klaus and Daryl Britt. The Committee on Trustees has a lot of duties in addition to nominating the at-large trustees and board officers. It conducts reviews of the head of school's performance and works on succession issues. It oversees board functions and works with the board clerk and the head of school to oversee and monitor progress on the strategic plan implementation, among many other functions. Its clerks are Lauren Brownlee and Lois Clark. I would recommend to you that this board is engaged, dedicated, and highly competent. It's my great privilege to work with such a fine group of folks. Please consider joining us in helping us make the school even better than it is now. So, we're going to first hear from the Diversity, Community, and Spiritual Life Committee. And so if I could ask Tanya and Gregory to come up. Thank you.
Evening, Sandy Spring parents, alumni, grandparents, faculty. I'm Tanya Lakey. As Kip said, I'm class of 74 alumni, a member of Sandy Spring Friends Meeting, and co-clerk Gregory Arms, co-clerk. And so with that, we can go on to the next slide. And next slide. So these are the people of the committee. There are approximately 6 of us with Gloria as a co-op. Right. And next slide. This is the charge of the committee. As I like to think about this as being a charge of listening and heeding to the health of the community, so that and with that community also the Board of Trustees. So with that, we include the spiritual health, the sense of community, and support the school in its intentionality around diversity, equity, and cultural competency. Next slide. So as we head into this current year, DCSL thought that the most important thing that we'd like to concentrate on is the issue of diversity and inclusivity. Is Sandy Spring Friends School and the Board of Trustees taking the appropriate steps to provide a diverse community respectful of individual ethnic, racial, gender, and spiritual differences? So, as you all know, that the Rodney Glasgow has been doing the diversity audit. And just a point of advertisement right now, the survey has been going on all through January, and the last one was January 30th, reminder that it's closing on February 7th, so please, parents, alumni, board members, please sit down and take some time to fill it out so that we can know about what your feelings are about the school and a variety of things. As that little plug, and thank you for doing so. We've also engaged in having the Board of Trustees with diversity training. So those are the big items. Next slide. The PowerPoint did work. So DCSL in the course of the year also thought that while these bigger projects are going on, we wanted to educate ourselves firsthand as to the issues of diversity, sort of hear what different groups within the Sandy Spring community have been, think about our community and how they contribute to it. So we started off with the diversity representatives. We've gone to the admission and financial aid, talking about how they look at diversity, how they provide financial support so that we can maintain on many levels a diverse student body. We've talked to the human resources about the hiring of faculty and administrators and how we can sort of work to enhance the diversity within that. We talked to the students. We had a great talk in January. Torch Upper School, wonderful. They're eloquent. They know what they believe, at least for the moment. So hands up to them. And to the younger classmen that will follow their pathways with sort of great words of wisdom that we need to listen to. We're going on to just listen to groups of faculty and forward, hopefully, the parents' groups. So that's what we've been working in terms of diversity. Next slide. I just want to make sure that that isn't the only thing that's been in our minds. We certainly pay attention to spirituality. We have, with Marty Hale here, has gotten a number of friends from Friends Home to visit for the upper school meeting for worship this winter. We've had also in the fall members of the Sandy Spring Friends meetings at large. We engage with the community. If it's diversity community, we do visit some of the faculty meetings for business. So we have some engagement in the community, and then we deal with the individual type of issues as they arise. You know, the sort of little stray problems that sort of nick at us and we need to discuss and sort of address so that we can move on. Next slide. So, and next slide. So one of the goals, of course, is to update our diversity statement, but really is to update the school. And so we take it right now as our goal this year is to listen, to learn, and to make a better community by growing a more diverse environment and developing better respect for each other's differences. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Barry, and I mean, I don't want to get up here and start a fight or anything, but KIPP Finance Committee, it's where it's at. I'm just saying, DCSL is cool and all, but finance is really where it's at, and I can prove it. I want to give you a few of the responsibilities we have in the Finance Committee, which is a really extraordinary group of individuals. Cynthia Raposo and I have the opportunity to work with. She's my co-clerk, and so every year we develop an annual operating budget with the staff. We monitor adherence to the budget reconciliation. We set long-range financial goals along with the funding strategies to achieve those goals. We monitor the school's investment portfolio and recommend adjustments when necessary and ensure its compliance with our Board of Trustees investment guidelines. And we ensure that approved financial policies and procedures are being followed. Those are good times, people, every Tuesday night. Good times. But no, seriously, we are very excited about our future and about our financial health. We have an operating budget. We can scroll to the next slide. We have an operating budget of approximately $22 million. Tuition and fees is our largest source of income, accounts for about 80%. We're excited about the kind of biggest area of growth we've seen over the last couple of years has come from our auxiliary programs, camp, the rental of our facilities. It's really wonderful the way that our campus is kind of paying for itself. One area that we'd like to see bigger growth, and you'll be hearing about this throughout the evening, is in our annual fund and contributions. Not so much necessarily about how much, though we'd like to see that number really go up. It's really about participation and really making sure that we get as many people involved as possible. On the other side of our slide here, not surprisingly, Our biggest expense comes from our biggest asset, which is our faculty and staff. I mean, they're really the heart of our community and why we're here and why we thrive the way that we do. So most of our budget goes for personnel expenses. The board, about 4 years ago, I guess, made a commitment to really start increasing consistently faculty and staff salaries so that we're more competitive with our peer schools in the Mid-Atlantic region, specifically within the National Association of Independent Schools, that association of our peers. So we're making good progress. We're not quite where we want to be yet, but slow and steady, we'll get there. We can go to the next slide. One of the things that we're also super excited about is our continued increase in enrollment, in inquiries and interest as well as enrollment. For many years, we were kind of one of the best kept secrets in Montgomery County, I'd say. People didn't really know who we were the Quakers, is that a cult, like what's that over there, kind of set back off of the road. But I think, through the outstanding work of our admissions office, working with our division heads, and our outstanding communication staff, and camp office, I mean, we are just getting the word out there, and our numbers are consistently and smartly growing. One of the things that we have been really concerned about and focused on is making sure that we grow in a smart way. About 22-23% of our budget is spent on financial aid for about 40% of our families. And it's really important to us as a board to make sure that we are able to maintain those commitments to our families. So you want to make sure that we're not taking on too many people and then not being able to support them in the way that they need to be able to continue and become lifers. We're excited also that middle school and lower school have done a really nice job kind of holding and growing, particularly in our pre-primary program. Our upper school numbers really have taken off nicely, which has just reinforced for us the need and the timing for us to grow our upper school building and space. So we're excited about the project. And I think that might be my last slide. But one of the other things I had wanted to mention that we didn't add the junior here, that we do have an audit committee. It is not part of the finance committee, but we do have a standing audit committee. Every year we go through an audit. Every year we come out shining. And that's a real testament to Carlton and Jessica and our finance staff. And I guess I just wanted to again close with, we're in a really strong position. We've been growing steadily with programs and academics. We've been strengthening them. We've been putting funding in to support our brand pillars, including sustaining our commitment to our faculty members. We continue to meet our commitments, improve programs and infrastructure, and remain in the middle of the pack or even at the bottom of the pack in terms of tuition increases when we look at our peer schools. So we're really excited about that, and we're excited that the new upper school building, the way that we've been able to structure the financing, is not going to be done on the backs of our current families, that we will not be doing this through tuition increases, that through our Light the Way campaign, we are going to be able to get this done without a burden to our families today. So, thank you.
Feels like the Oscars. I feel like we should tell a bad joke or something.
I wish someone had written one for us, but there are no cue cards.
I know one. What's the difference between a guitar and a trout?
I don't know. What is the difference?
You can't tune a fish. So, my name is my name is Tony Evans, and I taught here for 21 years in the middle school science. And this is now my third year on the board of trustees, and I'm assistant clerk of buildings and grounds.
And I'm Ken Pollack. I'm co-clerk of the Buildings and Grounds Committee, also on the Fund Finance Committee. This is my 6th year on the board, and I'm the parent of 2 former students, and we've been part of the Sandy Spring community really now for 12 years, which is great. So I thought what we'd do is we'd go through our committee charge, and then Tony will talk about some of the things we do, and I'll talk about one other project that you might be thinking about. Our charge is, as you heard from Kip in part, jointly with the head of school, develop buildings and grounds related policy for review and approval by the board.
Also, to oversee the medium and long-term planning and execution of all campus land use, plant improvements, and new building projects guided by strategic direction, projected costs, and implementation schedules.
We also oversee PRISM funding recommendations and disbursements, coordinate with the Finance Committee regarding the overall PRISM budget, which Tony will talk about in a moment.
We develop the annual committee goals, linking them to the school's strategic plan. Envelope, please. Oh, look, PRISMs. Okay. I love PRISMs. I'm very passionate about PRISMs, except the name, which I can never remember what that stands for. It's PPRRSM, which means it's the provision for plant renewal, replacement, and special maintenance. And that means, sort of in English, a reserve fund which is funded and replenished on an annual basis that provides the financial support for capital maintenance, replacement, and renovation of the school's physical plant and assets. So what does that really mean for us? What are some examples of that? It means that we are able to not only invest in our school, but we have to continually reinvest in our school. It is one thing to build a building, it is another thing entirely to maintain the building over the course of its lifetime. There's something, you may want to cover your ears, these are dirty words, but it's called deferred maintenance. And we want to not have that. We don't want to push off projects over time until we have a backlog that we cannot maintain. As a result of the board, and I take no credit for this because this all happened before I came on the board, but the board wisely sets aside, in conjunction with finance every year, an amount of money to cover these expenses. This is a 60-year-old school. We have buildings that have certain parts of them that are going to age out. Things like HVAC. These are things that Laura loves, okay? And we have to replace and plan for all of those. We do an audit, which tells when these things might age out, but then they don't read the audit, and so we don't know all the time when something will come up. And that is why we maintain a cushion. There's a $350,000 minimum that we maintain in PRISMs, because it's kind of like, like climate's what you plan for and weather's what you get. We can plan all we want for when certain actions will have to be taken, but we get surprised sometimes. So having a cushion allows us to respond in the moment to the things that break, and we didn't see it coming. This also allows us to accumulate money in this account that will allow us to undertake some major projects like the Westview Kitchen. We were able to do that without doing a capital campaign or going into operation budget, and it came in under budget. So that was really good. And the other thing is it can be used for repurposing some of the facilities that are going to become vacant when the upper school is built. So it's a very useful thing, and we review our PRISMs quarterly to be sure that we are preparing for the future and maintaining these buildings that are entrusted to us. And Ken is going to tell you about the newest, most exciting project.
So another of our principal functions is to help with building construction projects and oversight of land use and the like. So this is a picture of what will be our new upper school, which I'll give you some details. It's a 42,000 square foot, 3-story building. 18 instructional spaces, including 6 labs, 9 teacher workrooms, 10 administrative offices, 13 spaces for conferences, seminars, collaboration, a third-floor outdoor gathering space. It's a sustainable building, meeting the WELL building standard, and will be net zero ready. And we are repurposing some of the ash milled from trees that were on the campus but destroyed by the ash borer, and will provide a wall-to-ceiling aesthetic in the collection area of the building. We're very excited about it, but I've just described to you like some geometric details. I mean, really, this building is critical to achieving what David spoke about in terms of optimizing the education and the opportunities at Sandy Spring Friends School. By reconfiguring our learning spaces, by allowing our teachers better spaces to be mentors, to allow our students to have inquiry-based instruction and experiential learning in a much better and modern configuration than exists today. If we can go to the next slide. What have we been doing in the Buildings and Grounds Committee about this? We've been laying the groundwork for the groundwork. It's been, by the time the building is complete, it will be 8 or 9 years of work. We've done a variety of things. We've overseen the retention of a design firm to develop ideas from the community about how the school ought to be configured, how the classrooms will be used, what the needs are, and develop the conceptual design. We had significant discussion. There are so many different diversity of sustainability models out there, and we had a lengthy multi-year discussion about what would be optimal for us to achieve our goals and be consistent with our principles as a Quaker school. We retained an architect, a construction manager. We determined the construction project method to be used in a way that mitigates risks and aligns incentives between us, the architect, the construction management firm we're retaining, and ultimately our contractor to manage risks like costs, delay, changes, liability, and really completion risk. We've worked closely with the administration in reviewing the design and helping and working very closely with the Finance Committee and Advancement Committee on how to bring this all together. Because it's one thing to design a building and think about how great it could be. It's another thing to pay for it. And so we really appreciate the community's support and help and assistance in that regard. When the building is built, and we get from here to the prior slide, when we get to there next year, next spring, everyone will be ecstatic, and this will be a marquee differentiator for our school for years to come. Other things we will then turn to are things like the meeting house and repurposing spaces, but this is my 6th and last year on the board. This is the seminal thing that I think we've done as a board since I've been here. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Klaus, and this is Daryl Britt. My daughter Pippa is in 12th grade. My daughter Jensen is in 10th grade. They've been here since kindergarten. I also attend the meeting. And Daryl's son Mike graduated last year, and his granddaughter Talia started 9th grade this year. Daryl.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Next slide. So I wanted everyone to see this because this may be familiar to some of you. This went out earlier this school year, and it's a brochure that was distributed as we start educating and further educating the community on advancement. And as that says, advancement does the activities that makes SFS the Sandy Spring stronger. Next slide, please. So why advancement? Pretty obvious, I think. As we look at this picture, this is a picture of the campus from 1991. Can we flip to the next slide, please? And this is the campus today. And the advancement are all the activities that help educate the community on your philanthropy that helps transform Sandy Spring. The last campaign, I don't know if everyone here knows it, some of you may, there was a campaign called Kindle the Spirit roughly 10 or 12 years ago, and that added the middle school over there on the left, athletic center, and then the pack that we're doing tonight. Next slide. Advancement sports activities like this, the Quiz Bowl. Next slide. Athletic programs across all three of the schools. Next slide. Inter-school activities and education, all of that experience that you typically won't find in some of the public education. Next slide. And obviously our signature intercession program. How often do students get that opportunity to go to Mexico or do something in Puerto Rico or Vietnam? Next slide. Ultimately, this is what advancement supports. This is all of our goals as parents and grandparents, educators and administrators. Next slide, please. Lastly, you've heard a lot about this today, so there's probably no point in me going into detail. The biggest program that we're focused on right now with the Light the Way campaign is completion of the upper school. Next slide, please. Tom.
Thanks, Dale. So our community needs to raise $2 million to reach our goal of $12 million to build this wonderful building. So we all give back to the community in many ways. We give our time, we give our love, we give our expertise. But right now, we need to give our money to the Light the Way campaign to build this building. Specifically, we need leadership level gifts, which are pledges of money payable over multiple years in an amount that is meaningful and comfortable to you. So meaningful, the dollar value is meaningful to you, but it also needs to be comfortable. We're not asking anybody to forego their children's college education to build this building. So what's meaningful and comfortable will be different for everyone, for every family, and that is fine. There are many ways to reach our $12 million goal. You can see any of us here, any of us that you've seen on this stage. You can talk to Lauren Mosman or any of her wonderful staff in the Advancement Committee. But your leadership gifts pledged over multiple years will move the needle in this community in a way that would not be possible at a lot of institutions in the area. Many hands make light work, so we look forward to speaking with you further. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's a video that Lauren Brownlee.
Hello, Sandy Spring Friends School. This is Lauren Brownlee. I am a member of the Board of Trustees and one of the co-clerks of the Committee on Trustees. And I am talking to you via video because tonight I am actually teaching a class on building the beloved community, which I know is something that is important to the Sandy Spring community. I am talking about what it is like to be on the board and how you might express interest in the board. So I'm going to start with the fact that I am a representative of Baltimore Yearly Meeting on the board, and I'm appointed by Baltimore Yearly Meeting. There are 4 of us who are, and there are another 8 members of the board who are appointed by Sandy Spring Monthly Meeting. And in addition to those Quaker members of the board, there are also a number of parents and alums and other friends of the Sandy Spring Friends School community who serve on the board. So we really feature a diverse range of perspectives on the board, and that's really important because, as you hopefully have already heard tonight and will continue to hear tonight, the work of the board really does take into consideration the fullness of the Sandy Spring Friends School experience. And we are a board that cares deeply about the institution and really takes our responsibility as stewards of the school and supporters of the strategic planning and visioning of the school very seriously. We have monthly board meetings, we have monthly committee meetings on top of the board as a whole. And we really all work together to make sure that the school is going in the direction that we know that members of the community really want it to be going in. If you are interested in sharing your gifts with the school by serving on the board, please talk to either myself, Lauren Brownlee, talk to Lois Clark, who is my co-clerk of the Committee on Trustees, or talk to someone from the head of school's office, either Tom or Mary Lawson or David in the upcoming weeks. And we really would love to hear from people who are interested in making that commitment. Thank you so much for all that you were doing for the school as well, and I look forward to seeing all of you again soon. Bye.
And I'm Lois Clark, Lauren's co-clerk on the Committee on Trustees. And in addition to the responsibilities that she just outlined, the Committee on Trustees also maintains a profile of board members. And we don't keep this profile just because we're curious about little tidbits of information of each other. We do this because we want to ensure that the board is made up of a diverse group of people. Just as the student body, the administration, the faculty also has diversity. We also conduct an annual review of the board. This evaluation usually consists of a survey where the members rate, we rate our own performance as we look back and see how we felt we did during the past year, and the board overall. And it gives us the time to reflect and offer suggestions so we can improve the board's performance. In addition, we also oversee the annual performance review of the head of school. We're also charged with planning training to enhance the board's performance. We have an annual retreat. Recently, I think it was October, we had Rodney Glasgow meet with us and challenged us in terms of how we look at diversity. A very interesting and informative morning that we spent with him, or afternoon that we spent with him. We also plan for an orientation for new board members, and each board member, when they come on, is assigned a mentor. So we are in charge of that. We also conduct exit interviews for those board members who are retiring. And we try to take some of their ideas and implement them in terms of what they see as they're ending their term on the board. So you can see we offer a lot of, and are in charge of a lot of nuts and bolts kinds of things to hopefully keep the board running smoothly. Thank you.
So thank you, members of the board, not only for that information, but for the service you provide for the school day in and day out through your volunteer work on behalf of this wonderful institution. So now we're going to move to question and answer, and are we bringing the lights up? Great. This is an open conversation. I'll frame this a little bit in that this is probably not the best forum to ask about your child's algebra assignment or why the bus was late or that sort of thing. But if we're talking about things more programmatic or goals of the school or things that are going on school-wide or division-wide or certainly since we have the board with us, things that are on the strategic and the board level, absolutely ask those questions. We have other members of the school administration here, so you should have someone here who can address your question. And if you just stand up and sing out, and I'll try to acknowledge people. What questions do people have? This is what teachers call wait time, right? Yeah, thank you.
Frederick, my name. Quick one. Could you consider making the survey a little shorter?
Making the what?
The survey.
The survey a little shorter, yeah. Yeah, the diversity survey, we're getting a lot of feedback. It is a lengthy survey and can appear a little repetitive in some places. Obviously, it's trying to cover a lot of territory and provide people ample opportunities to share their experiences. But we have heard that it's a short, or it's not a short survey, that it's rather lengthy. So we appreciate you bearing with it to complete that. At the opportunity we have to repeat this in the future, that is feedback we will definitely be taking into account. Yeah?
I have a question about the new building.
The new building.
Other changes associated with the new building, if any. And my curiosity is, as the plans were developed over the last decade for how the building should be designed, what the community thought it needed to include, what facilities, the 6 labs, the design technology space, all of these new opportunities, were there decisions made of what areas to ramp up? Are some of the STEM subjects going to increase in terms of what's offered to the upper school students? Now that you have more labs and more in design technology space, does that mean you need to hire 1 or 2 science or design technology staff members? In other words, what programmatic and teaching changes might be associated with the new building changes?
Yeah. So the question, just to repeat it for the video, so we are building a new upper school. What went into the design of that building? What programmatic factors went into thinking of it, and is that going to lead to any expansion or changes in our program? Is that a fair summary of your question? Okay. So I think I'll field that one to start, but if there's someone else who would like to contribute to that, please do. That's a very complicated question, actually. There's a lot that goes into that. We have been constantly looking through the design of the building at our current needs, just in terms of simple number of spaces, some real basic things like that. How many classrooms do we need for our size student body, or the size of student body that we're growing into? And what are the things we want to be able to do, not only from an aspect of programmatic things like particular classes or subjects that we might bring into that space, but also in terms of the kind of teaching we want to be able to do that we feel our current classrooms really inhibit in some ways. Moore Hall is a wonderful building. Our alumni are very fond of it, but they are very tight classrooms. They were never designed as classrooms, and so the kind of teaching that we really want teachers to be able to do, where they're interacting more, mixing more with the students, getting in around and being able to break students into small groups and do project work. These classrooms are going to be able to facilitate that type of instruction more effectively than what we have now. We're greatly expanding in terms of the quality and quantity of our science labs, and that is paralleling increases that we're making in our science curriculum. In recent years, we've added more of an engineering and design aspect to our program. We've strengthened the physics aspects of our program, and we're going to continue to expand those. The first floor of the new facility has, I think, a very innovative and creative kind of a multi-space section to the building that involves a physics lab, an engineering lab, what we're calling a makerspace or a design lab that allows for a great deal of flexibility in terms of the student projects. The room can be reconfigured. Students can be working on different projects. There's something we're calling a dirty lab, which is going to be materials fabrication type stuff, like, you know, saws and that sort of thing for working with materials. It's kind of a clean lab, which is a technology lab that are associated with this engineering and project space. So that's the kind we're trying to move towards, not just in the sciences, in the STEM fields, but also throughout the curriculum. We're viewing that as not only a science facility, although it's primarily a science facility. One of the other things that I think, again, it's sort of, you can't point to a course, but in our current facility, our teachers are kind of scattered off all in their own classrooms or maybe in some offices distributed around. And the opportunities for faculty to cross paths with each other and to allow for the sort of serendipitous conversations that happen as you talk with colleagues and you pass them in the hallway or sharing an office with them or whatever. We looked into what's the psychology of buildings that promote collaboration and creativity. And that's part of the thinking we brought into this building, the way we've designed workspaces for students and for faculty. So that's a part of this building. Those are the things I think I would highlight right off the bat in terms of really things we're trying to leverage with this building. I think some of the things that this building can bring about, we don't even know yet. I think, you know, we've designed it to be a flexible and create enough space. I think there are going to be ideas and opportunities that grow out of this facility, out of having this facility that we just don't even see. We wanted to build in those opportunities, you know, to sort of provide the fertile soil, and then we'll see what grows out of that soil. Yeah.
Perhaps you said, and I missed it, when will the building be completed?
Oh, we all want to know that. The question is, when is the building going to be completed?
Last year, we
it's
told them we ready in fall.
Yeah, and boy, we sure wish that was the case. I tell you, trying to get construction approved in Montgomery County is just a long process, and we planned a long amount of time to get that all to happen, and it still took longer than what we had originally hoped and planned. The permitting process, the fundraising process was a long cycle. We needed to reach a certain point in the fundraising before we could move ahead. So it's, you know, at every step along the way, things just tend to take longer than you think they will. Now at this point, we have our permits. We're moving ahead with the construction, and you know what the weather's doing, and we're trying to get a concrete slab poured. Okay, so in order for the county to approve us to pour the slab, the soil conditions, moisture levels and stuff have to be at a certain point. We've had how many inches of rain in Maryland this summer and fall? Yeah, I mean, just time and weather are just not being our friends right now. So I'm a little hesitant to say when is the building going to be done. But if you think in terms of, you know, once we have shovels in the ground, but we haven't actually laid the first piece of the new building. We're thinking of it in terms of about a 14-month construction process. So if in this month we're able to get that foundation poured and start to move ahead with the actual construction, that puts into sometime mid-spring next year, 2020, that the building will be complete. So we're still hoping to be able to get into that building before the end of next school year. But we're really at the mercy of the weather and the county inspectors right now to be able to pin that down. Once we get the foundation poured on the ground, you know, in the ground and ready to go, things are going to be a little, knock on wood, things will hopefully be a little more predictable in terms of the construction schedule. Yeah.
My name is Dottie. This is our first year. Shane's an 8th grader.
Uh-huh.
Will there be a swim team so that, you know, my next question is, will you be building a swimming pool?
I apologize, I'm having,
Okay.
it's me, it's not you.
Project.
My hearing aid is just not quite good enough.
You stand up, you have more lung.
I could project.
Great, thank you.
Will you build a swimming pool? So the next question is, will there be a swimming team?
Yeah, so you're asking, will there be a swimming pool? The school administration just went, well, does Buildings and Grounds want to speak to that, or should I go ahead and?
Why don't you start?
Okay, all right. The school administration recently went through a process of you know, now that we have the upper school started, and we look at spaces that are going to be freed up because the upper school will be moving into a new space, and we look at other facilities and programmatic wants and needs. We went through a process of looking at what are our opportunities and our needs and start to establish some sense of priority to those. As you can imagine, there are plenty of things we could be doing in terms of facilities. But we did put together a priority list. I will tell you that a pool is on that list. We would love to have a pool to support our summer program, but also that starts to open up some program opportunities for the 9-month school program. Where that's going to fall on the priorities and the funding to make that available, that's kind of more of a question. Does the building grounds want to add to that?
No,
Yeah.
I think that sums it up pretty correctly. But David, I think we were talking about, like, at least the way it was explained, is an outdoor pool.
Yeah.
And mostly like swim team is like a winter activity. So I think that was the other part of the question. I don't know what the school's view is on having a swim team.
Yeah. I was answering that with two parts in terms of an indoor pool. One of the things we're looking at are programs we already have that are not adequately supported on campus. For example, tennis is a program where we have a tennis program, but we used to have tennis courts, but they are where this building is now. So, to have a tennis program, we'd really like to get tennis courts back onto the campus at some point. We would love to have a pool. It'd be great to have it be an indoor pool, but it's a question of where does that fit in the priorities of the school in relation to the other facilities needs. An indoor pool is a huge expense and a huge ongoing maintenance item, so it's something we would not enter into lightly. So I know, as I said, it's on the list, but where it's going to fall and when we might actually have a pool on campus, I can't even tell you at this point when that might be. So, anyone over on this side? Yeah.
So I had a quick question about whether there are ongoing discussions about how to increase the level of security on campus for next year in light of recent and ongoing school shootings.
Yeah. Does anyone from the board want to field that one? Okay.
Right. There are ongoing security projects going on right now. Is Laura here? I can't see a thing. Laura, can you kind of give us a quick update on the current initiatives? The board approaches this from a slightly more philosophical perspective. We have, as I mentioned during my remarks, we have a bit of a conflict. There is a value in having as open a campus as possible, but we have issues with lighting, the fairly large campus that we have. It's pretty dark on campus at night. We put lights in, but how much you can close the school down without losing something of the closeness of the community is something that I know that the administration's been grappling with for a very long time, and it's a subject that is of ongoing concern with the board. Laura, would you just...
Sure. Laura, can you go to the microphone since people are watching remotely? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Laura Miyoshi. I'm the Director of Operations for the school. And to address the question regarding safety and security, the school has a safety and security planning committee. Actually, David is the clerk of that committee, and a number of key members of the administration participate in that. The purpose of that is to look at the overall campus, and so I've been here for 17 years, and we have continually, I'll say, changed and upgraded security over that time. We continue to look at what technologies will assist us in providing a safer and secure environment. David and I have gone through several trainings We've actually attended seminars conducted by Homeland Security, and it's a very difficult process. We have a campus, and the training that they bring forth is often designed for adults in an office. And so, I went through one session and the training was, everybody scatter and just do what they need to. And I said, but we have 3-year-olds. It doesn't quite work like that. And so to answer your question, the school is looking at different ways. We have some consultants in that are working with us as far as what kind of locking system should we have. And because we have new buildings and old buildings, how can we centralize that system? We are looking at some video type, I'm not going to call it surveillance because we don't have guards sitting at a bank, but to record activity. One of the things I was educated on is that, cameras are good for post-event. And so the school is very, very concerned and looking at the things that will help secure the campus, but in speaking also to what David and Kip spoke about is also maintaining the open community piece of the campus.
Laura, have there been, I seem to recall a discussion about work you've done together with the Montgomery County Police Department?
Yes, I mean, we have, in my tenure here, we've developed a relationship actually with Montgomery County Police. The school here works very closely with the school resource officer at Sherwood. Montgomery County Public Schools in this area, we've developed actually a communication system so that, for example, if something happens at Sherwood or Good Counsel, all the schools in the area, public or private, we are informed. And that's something that we've reached out also to the Wheaton precinct. I've met the commander there. And so we've done things to make sure that the public safety officers are aware. And actually, you would be surprised, the traffic control folks that are out there every morning, they actually, they kind of look out for the school. So there are a lot of things you can do that aren't necessarily locks and keys that help with safety and security.
And there are also plans for alerting the parents and the community in case of some event that they need to know about.
That's our One Call Now. I think most of you are probably subscribed to that, where we do send out information. David and I work on plans for actually, things like we hope will never happen, but reunification, should we all have to move to another place? How do we get everybody back together? We have had situations where the front entrance was closed, due to an accident down at the Red Door store where no one could come from that direction. And how do we make sure that everybody is, one, they get the communication, two, they know what to do, and that there's a good support structure here as well.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add just one more thing to that, and Laura and Kip implied it, but we do have an administrative crisis response plan that's not a public document for obvious reasons, but we have a document that we have developed years ago and continually revise and update and add to that helps our administration have a sense of how to respond to certain kinds of issues and incidents, and we conduct drills as an administrative team on how we respond to various scenarios and so forth. So it's something we take very seriously. Other questions? Yeah.
I'm Selena. I have a daughter in 8th grade, and I'm part of the Quicker Meeting. I work, and my colleagues work locally in the community in the health and wellness field. And one of the things we all overwhelmingly report on when we get together is that we see increasing
Yeah, yeah. So the question is that as a person who works in the social, which term did you use? The mental health field? Health and wellness field, that you're asking how's the school viewing this as we see, as you're seeing students who are dealing with increasing levels of stress and challenge and so forth, what are we doing as a school and how do we view this? We're also seeing this. This is something that is talked about in education right now, about how much more stress kids seem to be under. We're definitely seeing it in our school. I mean, I think we have a healthy environment, healthy schools, but it's just the world they're living in. It is harder to be a kid nowadays than it was when I was young. There's just no question about that. I guess I'll start from just sort of a general student support framework and then maybe work inward a little bit, and then maybe ask my colleagues, division heads, if they want to add anything to this. When I first came to the school, which is, this is my 18th year now, we had one part-time learning specialist and one reading specialist, and we had one part-time counselor for the entire school. We now have 4 counselors, and we have 4 and are about to have our 5th learning specialist / reading specialist in the school. You know, a case could be made that maybe we should have had more resources in the past. We certainly need more resources now. And our students, I have not seen a change in the students that we are admitting to the school. They are much the same academically and socially as they have been my entire time here, but they're just simply under more stress. And there's a higher expectation, I think, from our parents of support for the school to be able to provide support. And we're responding to that support. The need for that support. We are constantly looking at our health and wellness curriculum all the way from our 3-year-olds up through our seniors as we're helping to prepare them for transition to the college environment. What are the ways that we can provide them the best possible skill set from a social emotional standpoint? I think it's one of those things that Quaker schools have traditionally done well, but the need is greater, and the sophistication that's expected from schools now is greater, and we are continuing to move that up so that we can do that better. So I know that's a fairly general answer to your question, but it is a constant and frequent topic of conversation among our faculty and administration as they're looking at our program in the dorm, in the classroom, in our health and PE curriculum, you know, on the playground, wherever it is, that social learning piece and that supporting students' social and emotional health is a big part of what we do. Division heads, anybody want to add to that? Anything specific for next year? Jonathan?
Yeah, I'll add just a few things. And I know I'm not in front of the microphone and with the camera, so hopefully this gets picked up in some way. A couple things. Earlier this year, because your daughter's in 8th grade, right? Yeah. So in the upper school, we participated in the Independent School Health Survey, which was a comprehensive assessment that we administered. It was not mandatory for students, but it was voluntary, but it was also anonymous. An extensive survey that asked questions, everything around homework and stress and, you know, to substance use and abuse issues, to time management, sexual habits, orientation, a wide-ranging assessment. We came to that over a year-long process the prior year of knowing we needed to gather more data around how our students were doing. So it's an organization that works with Indiana University in terms of processing those results and analyzing. We've just gotten back. We had the raw results earlier. We now have the report, and we're starting to work through that. Eileen Lees has been a driving force for us in terms of the upper school of that. So I'm thankful that we're starting to gather that. I would layer on to that we did a comprehensive risk assessment through National Outdoor Leadership School. Now, you may wonder how that relates. A big aspect of National Outdoor Leadership School is providing a positive learning environment when we take students out on intersession and other trips. And so social emotional support in those environments, we see a significant input for that, and then also how does that translate into the classroom. So those are a couple things. And then the last piece I would add is we looked at our schedule in the upper school. Eileen has done a phenomenal job of bringing speakers in. What we were realizing is that we'd have some phenomenal speaker who would come in, address some difficult issues, and then we'd say, okay, everybody go to lunch and go back to class. And so we adjusted the schedule for those assemblies to provide additional time for those speakers and for adults to meet with students beyond that to start to process those issues so that we can start to direct students when we need to in ways to get more support. Those are a few things to that.
David, you want to mention anything about middle school?
So looking forward with where we have been and where we're moving to, we work with the upper school to restructure our schedule a bit this year to offer students more time in the morning. This was done in part to allow for students who needed more time to get ready before the academic day begins, just to have that little short window. We've noticed it's kind of reduced a lot of anxiety. Downside, we have had some struggles with getting our buses here on time occasions, so we're still working out what the proper traffic patterns. I know yours, yes. The good news is that the design has been pretty solid in that we've seen a different level of anxiety for those folks having the extra 5 to 10 minutes in the morning to kind of gather their thoughts before going into an advising that is a little more meaningful in the morning. In particular, we've seen some really great results with 6th grade. We're going to be pushing that through 7th and 8th. They're kind of our guinea pigs for this year and how we revise some of the middle school programming by allowing our 6th graders to have some time to learn what it takes to become academically strong and to learn, from 5th grade moving into 6th grade, you're not really sure what a grade is. What is an A? What is a B? How much work does it take to get in that? Because in most schools in that 5th grade level, whether you're coming from Sandy Spring and moving into our middle school, or you're coming from the public system, you've been getting meets expectations, exceed expectations, versus receiving the traditional grade levels. So we've been working very hard with our students, and the first half of the year, I think the anxiety we saw from, say, last year's 6th grade class, my first year here, and this year's 6th grade class, greatly reduced. Then moving into the second quarter, the understanding of how to be a good student, how to handle it, because also within that there was training about how do you best study? What tools do you think you need? So this is going to be pushing through, and it's, again, part of what was mentioned about MBE. We are going to be doing this every year, revising what we're doing well to get it better, revising the areas that we're not hitting as well as we can. The downside is, I think, for every great thing that we can do, we have a lot of societal pressures to work with. The areas of social media that we have to work within, we went home from school and school stayed there until we came back the next day when we were young. Our students go home from school and it's always on. There's never a break. So I think that's a big contributing issue that we need to work with parents, and we are doing some work this spring in April and May in both the middle school and upper school parents about helping navigate some social media challenges that are happening out there, which I think really brings a lot more pressure for our students. So we're working on the parental part of that as well.
Yeah, I'll mention I'm trying to think. I think it's our 5th year as a one-to-one school, and as our society gets more and more experience with devices and mobile communication and 24-hour accessibility of social media or information, whatever. That's something we continue to look at as a school and tweak how we incorporate that into the school. We're learning along the way. Parents are learning how to deal with this. That is stuff we are paying very close attention to, because there's a lot of information out there that this is also an aspect of our students' experience that has a potential impact on their social and emotional well-being. So this is one of the aspects that we continue to look at very closely. It ties very much into the MBE work that I described earlier and so forth. So I was asked to mention at about this time that parents who do have children that were in the kids after hours daycare, that there is a 9 o'clock end time for that care, so it's 8:45-ish now. So just a friendly reminder. So are there other questions? If you have a question that you didn't get formulated, weren't sure whether to ask, or occurs to you later after you this stuff circulates around in your head. Please know that there are many open doors at the school. Anyone, and the administrators are here. I know the board would be happy to hear from people about things at the strategic level of the school. My door is open. When Tom gets back in March, his door is open. So please feel that as an open and perpetual invitation to come in and ask, talk, suggest, inquire. We love that. So unless there are other questions, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Yeah?
About the diversity focus groups, did you name
Yeah.
there were focus groups?
Yeah, it's part of the diversity audit.
Different populations, and that there may be some parent ones?
Yeah, we're in the process of configuring those. They're going to be different configurations, by constituent group, by identity, by role in the school. You'll be hearing a bit more about those. Some of those are going to be by invitation because we want to solicit, in some cases, diverse groups or people from certain groups of the school community. But where we can extend open invitations, we will be doing that. They're on February 11th and March 11th, and so you'll be shortly hearing more about it.
Are those just, are we looking at other kinds of diversity, or is
We're
this just right
looking
now?
at diversity in the broadest possible spectrum. A lot of it is through cultural and self-identity lenses, but really we think of diversity in very broad ways, not only race or ethnic diversity. Okay, friends, thank you so much. Drive